Please, Liz. All right. Okay, good evening, welcome. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Sheila Baker-Gujral, and I am the Resource Center Director at the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions, or ANJEC. ANJEC is also represented tonight by our Executive Director, Jennifer Coffey, and our Deputy Director, Liz Ritter. I would like to thank all of you on this webinar tonight for coming, and a special thanks to our guest speakers, Barbara Heskins Davis from the Land Conservancy of New Jersey, which is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year, so congratulations. And thanks also to Kevin O'Leary, the Deputy Mayor of Lafayette Township, who will share with us his experiences on the open space front. So so that's our agenda. So we're going to be starting out with Barbara's presentation, and then Jennifer will have hers, and Kevin O'Leary will be the cleanup batter, I guess. And then we will be saving all the questions until the end. So the Q&A section will be at the end. You can go ahead and put your questions into the Q&A area. So this session will be recorded and available afterwards to all of our registrants. And we will also be sharing PowerPoints and other resources. We have a brand new, let's see, is it up here? Up here, look, we have a brand new resource, an open space plan resource paper that we will be sending you the link to that. It just recently got loaded up onto our website. So that's very exciting news on that front. So, so please remember to put your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll get to them at the end. And if we do not get to your question, or if you come up with a question afterwards, feel free to email us at info@anjec.org, and we will get your questions answered. So we're going to start off with a poll to find out who we have in the room, as it were. So if you'll see it's poll number 1, and you can scroll down. There are 4 questions. So you can scroll down and answer all 4 of those. And we put the questions also up on the slide here, so that when we have a recorded version, we can see what it is that people are responding to. So we're just trying to find out what everybody's experience is, and what is your role and interest in the community. So I can't see, Liz, how that's
yeah, it's about just about half the people. So if you give it another few seconds, that will be good. I'll let you know when it's ready to go.
And you
great.
need to use the sidebar to scroll down in the questions, so you can get to numbers 3 and 4. And I can't load the vote because it won't let panelists vote.
You're not allowed to vote.
They've insured the system against it by me.
All right, let's end this poll. I'm going to share the results.
Great. So we have a lot of environmental commissioners. We have 74% environmental commissioners. We have a few elected officials. We have some open space committee members and interested residents. Does your town have an open space plan? 58% of you said yes. 12% said no, and 29% did not know. Does your town need to update its plan if it's more than 10 years old? 37% of you said yes to that. 18% said no. 37% did not know, and then 8% of you do not have an open space plan. And then finally, do you have a property that you are targeting or trying to purchase for open space? And 43% of you said yes, you did, and 57% of you said that you did not. So thanks for sharing that, Liz. And so first up, sorry, excuse me. Back here, we will have Barbara Heskins Davis. Barbara Heskins Davis is the Vice President of Programs at the Land Conservancy of New Jersey. Under Barbara's leadership, the Land Conservancy has completed 170 land conservation plans to protect open space, farmland, and land for flood mitigation. Barbara served as chair of Randolph Township's Open Space Committee for 15 years, and their 16-mile trail system through 2,000 acres of open space is a highlight of their program. She received her Bachelor of Science in Biology and English from Franklin and Marshall College and earned her Master's of Environmental Management in Water and Air Resources from the Duke University School of Forestry and Environmental Studies. So Barbara's going to speak to you about the basics of open space and recreation plans. Why do you want to have an open space plan? How do you set them up? And how to use them to enhance stewardship of municipal lands, including conservation easements, parks, and recreation areas, and other municipal properties. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that Barbara can share her screen and show us her presentation.
So good evening. I'm hoping everybody can see my screen. It starts with open space and recreation planning. Just
Yes.
nod your head. Okay, good. Just want to make sure I did it right. Well, it's really a pleasure to be with everybody. I'm glad we did the poll to start out. Good to know that the Environmental Commission attendance is so high and that Open Space Committee members are here as well. 60% of you have an open space plan, but you're not sure if it needs to be updated. And 40% of you have a property that you're interested in acquiring. So you're in the right place to learn more about what it is that you need in order to access public funding. There's something to keep in mind. Whenever we write an open space and recreation plan, we do it so that you can get more funding to preserve and protect land. So I want you to think it's all about the money. We write the plan so that you can write good grant applications, that you have good, solid information, and it's based on community input and community goals. So that's really what we're going to focus on. So Green Acres is the main funding arm for land acquisition in the state of New Jersey. Green Acres you can think of as the realtor for the state of New Jersey. Just like when you buy a house, you have to have a survey done of the property and you need to have title work done. Whenever you buy land, you have to make sure that you're doing all of that same due diligence. You have a survey done, you make sure the title is clean, and of course you do an appraisal and always an environmental assessment of that property. Green Acres has several programs. On Friday, they announced a new program, which we're very excited about, and it's based on the DEP's environmental justice mapping on overburdened communities, where they've named urban eligible communities. If you're an urban eligible community, you're eligible right now for a $500,000 grant with no matching requirement for land acquisition or park development. So you can go on the Green Acres website to find out more. The traditional open space program is this planning incentive program where you have an open space trust equal to 1/2 cent per $100 of assessed value, and you have an open space plan that's current within 10 years, which is why one of the questions was, is your open space plan current within 10 years? Very easy for it to start to get a little bit older. If you have both of those things, an open space trust fund equal to 1/2 cent and an open space plan that's current, you're eligible for the planning incentive program, so that any one of the properties that's identified in your plan is potentially eligible for Green Acres funding. And your plan is the application. Much easier process, much greater access to public dollars, and a much better way to go. So let's talk about what's in that plan. So this is Lafayette's plan, which Kevin's going to go over when he speaks, one of my favorite towns up in Sussex County. We finished their plan in 2020, and it was an update to their original plan, and Kevin will talk a little bit more about it. We always include an executive summary. I want you to think about if you're mayor of the town and you want to be able to have that soundbite. Why do you want to preserve open space? How much money have you brought in? How have you leveraged it? That's really the key point of an executive summary. So somebody can look at it and has an overall picture of why I'm doing this and why it's so important for my community, so they can justify the program and the collection of the tax. The goals of the open space program can be done in a variety of ways. Goal setting, I'm sure you all know how important it is. It's part of every master planning document. An open space plan, you can do it as part of a community visioning session with public input. You can do it with the Open Space Committee. You can do it with the governing body. You can look through your existing planning documentation. And we tend to do all of those things because we want to make sure that the goals really speak to the town. These are Livingston's open space goals. We did Livingston's open space plan. We updated it as a trails plan, and we recently updated it again. And in Livingston Township and Essex County, the real impetus was public health and quality of life. They wanted to make sure that people could get out and walk their open spaces. I don't know what you're seeing, but what I'm seeing is that there was a huge rush to purchase and preserve land. And now there's an equal level of importance to accessing that property. And we can all see that from the past year's impact of the pandemic. Everybody was out walking. Everybody was trying to find a place to go and connect with the land, and most importantly, connect with other human beings. So open space is a perfect place for that. The next couple of sections are requirements of the Green Acres guidelines, and they're good things. They require 2 public meetings. Typically, we recommend that one's at a governing body meeting, one's at a planning board meeting, because those are both the bodies that have to adopt it and implement the plan. History of the open space program. What have you done? What have you collected? How have you leveraged that? Again, those are this kind of an audit of what your open space trust fund can do. It may turn out that you haven't purchased any land, but you've been spending down your trust fund. Well, where have you been spending it, and what's the public benefit? And is it being seen as a public benefit? Are you communicating that well enough? And then this inventory, I'll get into that just a little bit. So I wanted to give you an example of a public meeting. We did Edison's open space and recreation plan update recently, within the last 2 years. And I was impressed. Their first public meeting was part of a municipal governing body meeting, and there were 100 people in attendance. We used dots to help prioritize goals, and it really set the direction for Edison's open space plan. And I'm incredibly pleased because this is an urban community. It's the 5th most populated town in the state, and they are actively working with Middlesex County on the preservation of property that have been earmarked for a warehouse development. So has a great open space benefit, and it can be done because they updated their open space plan. So this is what I meant by the inventory. Green Acres requires a map that shows what is there, what is preserved, and in some cases how land is being used. So we use the tax assessor database. It's defensible. It's not something open to interpretation. It's this is what it is. It's not a zoning map. We use zoning, but this is not a zoning map. So in this example, this is Madison Borough and Morris County. Anything that's green is permanently protected. Anything that's pink is educational or charitable property. Anything that's orange is commercial, and yellow is undeveloped land. Purple is usually public. So you can in a quick overview see that they do have some parks in the northeastern section of the municipality, large educational institutions, and they're looking for ways to connect in with their downtown center and the train station. So it gives you a real good basis. Historic and cultural resources can really form the backbone of a community. A good example of this is when we worked on Sussex County's open space plan. The barns of Sussex County really form the landscape of the county. If you've ever driven through, and I'm a big bicyclist, I bike ride all over, all those barns really make you know that you're in Sussex County. This is Caldwell Borough, and you can see that the churches, and they have historic rocks, and the firehouse are known quantities in the municipality. So it's not that they're using their open space funds to preserve those properties, but they're using their the venue, the platform of open space to make sure that those historic properties are buffered and become part of the landscape. Another good example is in Washington Township in Gloucester County. They have several sites that are on the state historic preservation office with the National State Register. So we document those and include those in the plan. There are towns that use their open space trust to preserve historic properties. Pequannock Township in Morris County was able to do it, and they own it. very unusual for a municipality to own a historic site. It comes with a lot of responsibility. We've worked with several towns. Madison is actually one of them, where they got the New Jersey Historic Trust to hold the easement of the historic property. A challenge, but it can be done. An easement is a right to the property. So the property remains in private ownership, but the easement actually takes away the development of that property. It's most commonly done with farmland in New Jersey, but there are historic easements and there are conservation easements that protect the natural resource value. I think they're challenging, but they are done. Planning consistency. You need to look at the other plans in the municipality. You need to make sure that your master plan isn't telling you to put this site, as affordable housing, but your open space plan says this is the most important open space future park site in the municipality. First of all, you won't get public funds to purchase it if it's on an affordable housing plan. And second of all, it's just this huge inconsistency. Very common with farmland plans where they look at this, but open space plans are equally important. It's one of the reasons you need to have a public meeting with the planning board so they can make sure that everything's going kind of in the same space. A great tool that's now out there is called Conservation Blueprint. Google it. I think it's New Jersey Mapper 2. Great interactive website. Put in the address for your municipal building and click on the options. This shows the community green space for Wantage Township, and they actually identify high, medium, and low priority areas and give you definitions for why they've ranked them that way. It's not a government site. It was done by Rowan, the Nature Conservancy, and New Jersey Conservation Foundation. But if you go on any Green Acres application now, they are requiring you to look at Conservation Blueprint. So get familiar with it and know how to use it so you can fill out those applications. Recreation. This is one of the biggest questions I get. This is an open space and recreation plan, but it is not a recreation master plan. We're not engineers. I'm a planner. We're a land trust, but we do document the recreation resources in the municipality, how they're used, what the trends that are being seen, what do people want. So a big part of this open space planning is stakeholder outreach. Who's using the land? How are they using it? What do they want to have seen? And how does an open space system help meet those needs? And it varies from municipality to municipality. One of my favorite recently was in Verona Township in Essex County. We're doing their open space plan. And I had a meeting with their recreation committee chair who said they're setting up an esports program, that they feel that there's a whole segment of the population that does these gaming sites and they need a way to interact and connect one human to another. So the Recreation Committee, even though it has nothing to do with outdoor sports, is really looking for a way to engage other people of all abilities and interests. And I thought that was just brilliant. The last two sections of the plan are kind of the meat of the plan, the recommendations and the action program. So what exactly is a system of open space and what are the benefits of that? And what's a greenway? So I just want you to take a deep breath. When you think of your town and you think about what it is that's important, is it that people can get outside and walk? Is it that they can go out and hunt? Is it that they can walk to the downtown and get a cup of coffee? I would love to be able to do that. But what is it that defines your landscape? And really, why do people move? What's the consistent quality of life, and how does open space help meet that? So I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of what we've seen and the recommendations that we've tried to make. We did Sussex County's open space plan. This was kind of a two-part plan. Really wanted to know where their most critical water resources were, so we did a computer model showing those water resources. And the second thing they wanted to know was, okay, we got all of this public land, both municipal, federal, and state. How do we take care of it? So we partnered with the Wallkill River Watershed Management Group, who gave concrete recommendations on kind of a local level for how you can take care of your land, what you should be looking for, and where you should be looking for it. This is my favorite Sussex County trivia question. You know, how many acres does Sussex County own for parkland? They own one. It's the green in Newton. So there you go. Everything else is state and federal. A lot of towns need to know the community benefits of open space. They know the Open Space Committee understands it, the Environmental Commission understands it, but they want to be able to communicate that. And there's some really good recent studies that can give you information about the value added for open space. So we'll include that in a plan. Again, think about those talking points, you know, making the case for open space. Your open space plan isn't just a document of what's out there. It's a document that gives you those tools to be able to communicate why preserving the land is so important. Greenways. So these are connections from one property to another. If you look at that conservation blueprint that I mentioned earlier, they are very big into connecting landscapes. So this is West Orange Township, and you can see that their greenways kind of cover two types of resources. The big blobby blue things are the riparian, the stream greenways. So you can see Canoe Brook and Peckman River. Very important because it also heads north into Verona Township. And then those forested landscapes in West Orange Township, tree cover came up as hugely important in every public meeting. So kind of those squiggly green lines are the tree cover from the DEP. And you can see kind of where they're located, and they're much more narrow, focused in landscapes. And that's when you can make that site-specific type of recommendation. What's interesting is that if you look over the municipal border into Verona Township between the Montclair Golf Club and Eagle Rock Reservation, the Land Conservancy just finished helping Verona Township close on 11 acres next to the reservation. Very exciting, which is why we're doing the open space plan so they can get reimbursement dollars from the state of New Jersey. The action plan. So this is kind of like, what do you do? So for the Open Space Committee or the Environmental Commission, who's ever going to steward this plan, this gives you the nuts and bolts of the strategies and the tools by which you can help to make decisions and move forward with your open space plan. So this gives you some examples of, you know, recommendations we gave for Vernon Township, which we're now in the process of updating back a couple of years ago. You know, submit it to Green Acres, open up access, go out and see your properties, determine which properties may be suitable for public funding, and reach out to your landowners. My boss tells me this all the time. You know, I'll tell him, well, people know what it is. I talk to them and I tell them. He says, you know, people forget, people change positions, people move on. So, you know, your landowners, they might just move on. So even if you sent out a note 5 years ago, do it again. You know, send them out because you never know who's going to be there. So one of the things I wanted to be sure to mention before I turn this over to Jen is that there is funding to help you write these plans. So the first one is if you're in the New Jersey Highlands and your town is in a preservation area. So if some part of your town is within the preservation area, there may be reimbursement funding through the Planned Conformance Grant process to fully cover the cost of your open space plan or the update to your open space plan. The best way to find out is to contact the Highlands Council staff liaison for your municipality. Again, much higher likelihood if you have a portion of your town in the preservation area. If you're entirely within the planning area, it's a little more tricky to get that funding. The second way to help support the cost of your open space plan is to apply to ANJAC. They have stewardship grants, which are due on April 19th. They're $1,500. An open space plan is an eligible grant, and I'm going to step off of my open space planning platform for a minute, and I'm going to tell you, apply anyway. If you have a really good, innovative project that you need funding help for, you want to put goats out to eat some of those invasive plants, you want to fence in your park to prevent the deer, apply to ANJAC. They're looking for good projects to help fund for managing and protecting your land, and they're smart at ANJAC. And they can help you. The third source of funding is through Sustainable Jersey. That funding deadline just passed. It was due on Friday. But it comes up every year, and they have $10,000 and $20,000 grants, and this is an eligible grant application, and doing an open space plan will get you 10 points on your Sustainable Jersey application. The last and most important source for paying for your plan is your open space trust fund. Doing an open space plan or updating it is an allowable expenditure from your open space trust fund. And I have to say, at least 90% of the towns that hire the Land Conservancy do pay for our services from the open space trust fund. So I'm going to turn it over to Jen, who's going to talk to you about the importance of community engagement and getting the public on your side. This is what they're good at. This is what they do. And then she's going to turn it over to Kevin, who's going to talk about what Lafayette did when their open space plan and their open space trust fund. So I'm going to stop my share, and I'm going to thank you very much.
Thanks, Barbara. That was really great. I appreciate it. And there are some fantastic questions in the Q&A that I have not dived into yet. So you might want to take a look at some of those, Barbara. I think there are some good things we can go through and chat about during the Q&A, and it might be helpful to many others. I am going to share my screen, choose the right window of the 9 I have open. There we go. And so I am going to speak a little bit about, you should all see my screen now, is that right? Sheila,
Yes.
if you get, great, thanks. I want to talk a little bit about, as Barbara set up, community engagement and government support and why that's important. We have a lot of environmental commissioners on here this evening, and I think you all know why it's important to engage the community. There is strength and power in the public. And so when you have the public with you, and when you have information from the public and you're advocating for things that the public want, you gain power and support from your government on that. So we're going to talk a little bit about those processes. Like all relationships, they are the relationships with your community and with your elected officials are long-term relationships. And so they take input and they take communication, they take work. And like all relationships, if the only time you're speaking to the other party is when you want to tell them what they're doing wrong or when you want something from them, it's not necessarily going to be a healthy relationship. So you need to work at these relationships year round. And I know our environmental commissioners on here know this. So this evening, I am going to go through very briefly some EC powers, roles and responsibilities. Then we'll talk about EC relationship to open spaces and building relationships in your community, a little bit about environmental justice. And I'll just repeat the deadline, since Barbara gave some really great information about our open space grants. The deadline for that is April 19th. So it's coming up quickly. But it is an easy application, or at least we strive to make it an easy application. So no federal grant requirements here, so no big loopholes. For those of you who attended our Fundamentals for Effective Environmental Commissioners courses that we held throughout March, thank you for being with us. We had more than 600 environmental commissioners and municipal officials that joined us throughout March for our Fundamentals course. You would have learned or been refreshed in your knowledge that the enabling legislation regarding environmental commissioners is NJSA 4056A. So that's a good reference for you to have statutorily to go back to and look at what the roles and responsibilities are for an EC. As Barbara mentioned, there are often multiple layers of government that are engaged in open space planning. So yes, ECs, yes, open space commissions, often yes to a planning board, often yes to a governing body. And so you should know that as an EC, you have a right to have a shared member on the planning board. ECs are advisory. And if we have anything to do with that, we will continue to work to enhance the roles and responsibilities and legal authority of ECs. But right now, under New Jersey's law, ECs, as you know, have an advisory capacity. But what you are tasked with doing as an environmental commission under the law, even though you don't necessarily have as much power as I know some of you would like to have, or I would like you to have, you are empowered to study and make recommendations on water, air, waste, noise, landscape protection, etc. And under the NJSA 40 : I forgot it already, which is why I have it written down on a reference sheet. You are required to create an open space index. Sometimes this is referred to as a ROSI, a recreational open space inventory. Often municipalities will designate the open space index, also known as an open space plan. The language is fungible, to an open space committee, but do know that it is under the law the responsibility of the Environmental Commission. So you should ensure that you have liaisons between your EC and your open space committee or commission in your town. You are also enabled as an environmental commission to create an ERI or an NRI, an environmental resource inventory or natural resource inventory. This is a great fountain of information when you are looking at open space planning. So looking at what you have so that you can protect it. There are lots of elements, as Barbara went through, to think about when you're creating an open space plan, but certainly the biology, the biota in your town, the access of different communities to open space, impacts of climate change, and where you might want to think about protecting your open space or fortifying some of your lands with some stewardship activity, which we'll talk about at a future date. These are all great things to consider when putting together your open space plan. So that ERI and NRI, environmental resource inventory, natural resource inventory, can really work to inform your open space plan. I'm trying to make sure I don't go too much over time today. One of the real fabulous things that effective environmental commissions do is they publish what their goals are for the year. And they put them right out there after they've had conversations as a commission, and they ask for them to be posted on their township website and or their EC website if they have them, publish them in your township newsletter, either hard copy or virtual, electronic if you have one, and include your open space goals in there, include your stewardship goals, include your acquisition goals. And so there are a lot of environmental commissions that go through this on a yearly basis. So there's no question about what they're working on. That kind of transparency in relationship building and community relations really goes a long way. For those of you who want a refresher or maybe have new committee members or weren't able to make it to our training in March, don't worry, you didn't miss it. It's all on YouTube at ANJAC Views. So you can go ahead and look at any of the 4 different topics. We held 8 sessions, but there are 4 topics for the fundamentals for effective environmental commissioners that is on YouTube. Hold on one second. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. I think this was a book from the 90s, How to Win Friends and Influence People, but let's talk about how to win friends and influence your elected officials at the local level. So how do you do that? Well, I know you know that elected officials, whether they're at the municipal, county, or state level, have a lot of issues on their plate. And first and foremost, for me and for many of you, will usually, if not always, be some environmental issue: climate change, open space, access to open space, invasive. We could go on and on and on. But we also need to recognize that elected officials are people, and they have jobs, and they have families, and they have to deal with the tax bills that went out, and the pandemic that is still among us, and the mailboxes that were hit by the snowplows. There's still a few of those that are down in my neighborhood. So all of these issues are on their plate. And one of the ways that we can make sure that we build relationships with elected officials is to give them easy wins, give them a yes, give them a path to say yes. When you have a project, whether it's an ANJAC project or a Sustainable Jersey project, or some other project that you're working on, ask them to come out. We have varying degrees of accessibility to having in-person events now. Some of the photos I'm showing are pre-pandemic, so they don't have masks. We always encourage people to be safe and to abide by the health standards, wear your mask, keep your distance. But when you can, invite your elected officials into your virtual event or invite them into your in-person event and let them say a few words about what this project means to them and the community. Give them those easy wins. When you do get grants from ANJAC or Sustainable Jersey or other places, we encourage you specifically at ANJAC and will help you to write a press release about that grant. Get a quote from your mayor or your elected officials and send that out there. Post it on Facebook, tweet about it. Get the word out there, let them celebrate, let your success be their success, let their success be your success. So have a win, a positive engagement together. So when you do need to come to them and ask them for the DPW to come and work with you, or a little bit of matching funds, or you're having an issue about maybe something that's not even open space related, you have a basis of a positive interaction behind you so that you can move forward and have an uncomfortable conversation or have an ask of your municipal official, knowing that it's not the first time you're coming to them to tell them what they're doing wrong or to ask something from them, but you've got that positive interaction to build on. And again, ANJAC is here as your resource. We will help you identify the local papers to send information to send photos to. We love to share EC projects on our social media feed. So go ahead and send us the information and we'll help promote your local projects as well. So one of the common questions that I would get back when we were in the office in the before times, the phone would ring and it would happen more frequently than I like to admit, but it would be an EC member and they'd say, I don't know if you've ever heard this. You say, okay, well, try me. But my mayor hates me and the mayor hates the EC. And I go, oh, okay, what's happening here? I'm sure the mayor doesn't hate the EC, but it means that there's some issue, there's some struggle, there's some consternation. And it could be decades old, it could be a week old, it could be resolvable, or it could be longstanding. And so when you are dealing with a challenge or sometimes genuinely a challenging administration, in which, again, ANJAC is your resource, we're your strategy. We've been around for 50 something odd years at this point. So we've heard most things and we've worked through most things. If your mayor really hates you and is trying to get rid of the EC, that's a longer conversation on a different webinar. So we'll deal with that individually. But when you are having a challenge with your administration, instead of focusing on butting heads, focus on offering solutions. So what's the stress point? Is it money? Is it time? Is it thanks? Who's getting the credit for it? We can help you brainstorm around those. Most things are solvable. They might not be solvable exactly the way you want them to be solved or in the time frame that you want them to be solved, but most things are solvable with a little bit of creativity and flexibility. You also want to make sure that you have power that's rooted in your community. So you have made the connections with your churches, your synagogues, your mosques, your scout groups, your community groups, your moms groups. Now is a great time to try to connect with them and be at their virtual meetings. There's not a lot of travel involved. It is getting a little bit safer when you can be outside. You're not asking people to go into the 3 feet of snow, which I was happy to do because I like the snow over the winter, but I know a lot of people are happier to be outside and distance and masks. So build that community support, invite people to go and visit your parks and connect with you, to come to your EC meetings and tell them, have the community tell them what's important to you. Where would they like to see more open space in your community? And obviously, finding out what's important to your elected officials is paramount. You may not always be able to work on projects that they want to work on. It may not make sense to always work on those projects, but you want to make sure that there's a dialogue and that they feel like they're being heard. And again, it's your mayor usually doesn't hate you, but may not be interested in the work that your whole commission is doing, or thinks that a certain project might take priority that he or she wants. It's not personal, this is business. I know this is passion. We are all passionate about the environment. We are passionate about our communities, but reserving yourself a little bit away from whatever issue at hand. Your mayor might just be in a rough mood that day because 6 mailboxes got knocked down by a snowplow and it has zero to do with you. So distancing yourself a little bit and realizing it's not personal is often very useful. Taking a deep breath, calling ANJAC, you can vent to us, we'll chat it out, we'll develop some strategy, and then you go back at it again. One of the things I love most about ECs is your tenacity. You know that you'll go back at it again. Again, creating trust is huge in building community relationships. You want to make sure that you have trust and alliances that are rooted throughout your community. So don't just always go back to that one neighborhood or that one well of connections that you have. Challenge yourself to reach out to other areas of your community that you maybe don't have strong relationships with. Being a good EC member and creating community connections is really also about being an informed citizen. And that's the responsibility of all of us in America, right? To be informed citizens. I was doing some nerdy constitutional reading in the past few months, and in one of the Federalist Papers, Madison talks about the fourth branch of government being an informed citizenry. And so having knowledge of what's going on at your council meetings, knowing, are they really struggling with that snowplow mailbox problem? And maybe it's not the right time to come to them with an ask for an open space issue, or maybe it is, maybe because we're in a pandemic and we've all seen the value of our open spaces. It's the perfect time to talk about open space planning. Go to your planning board meetings, understand what they're facing. And also know your rights. And if you're concerned about them or confused, reach out to us. If we don't have the answers at ANJAC, we have great partners like Trust for Public Land, like other municipalities. We're going to hear from Kevin shortly. We can connect you with others who've been down this road, and they can share their experience and their knowledge. I want to challenge you, as I said earlier, to build relationships outside of your traditional relationships that you have. What we see in a lot of environmental commissions is a predominantly white-led environmental commission, and what we see in a lot of environmental organizations are predominantly white-led environmental organizations. We sit here in New Jersey as the most densely populated state in the nation and the most diverse state in the nation. So we have such wealth of knowledge and experience and values in New Jersey that we can embrace from an environmental protection standpoint and a community engagement standpoint, that it really strengthens our movement to strengthen those relationships. As you may have heard, in New Jersey, we now have an environmental justice law, and this identifies what are called overburdened communities. So communities that are overburdened with more pollution than their surrounding communities. They are identified as communities that are overburdened communities are identified as those who are minority, low income, English as second speaking language. I'm gonna pull up the map right now. This is the DEP map. I'm not in love with the colors. Don't shoot the messenger here. I know it's a little difficult to see, but basically anywhere you see on the map, the blue is the easiest to see, but there's some pale green and there's some really pale peachy color here. And it goes all the way from nose to toes here of New Jersey. We have environmental overburdened communities identified by census tract. So there are portions of municipalities, not whole municipalities, throughout the state of New Jersey. And I would encourage environmental commissioners who are looking to redo an open space plan, take a look at that plan and take a look at this overburdened communities map. This is on the DEP website. I will encourage, if it's not already in the conservation blueprint NJ Mapper 2 that Barbara referenced, for us to get this in there. I serve on the steering committee for that initiative, so I'll see if we can't get this in there as a layer if it's not already there, so that you can overlay your open space preservation and your overburdened community maps and see where are the open spaces in relationship to our communities. Does everybody have equal, or are we moving towards some equal access to our open spaces? And to think these issues through as your community. That's part of what I think planning is about. Again, just moving towards wrapping up here and handing the mic to Kevin. ANJAC does have an open space grant program up to $1,500, the application. is coming up on April 19th, I think we said. There are lots of projects that ECs perform under these with these grant program monies. So they create pollinator gardens, green infrastructure, rain gardens, community food gardens. Excuse me, this is another pollinator garden. Garden clubs get engaged with environmental commissioners. This is a green infrastructure project that one EC was engaged with last year. So you can see distance, fewer people, masks. You're still doing the work. You're out there, you're doing it. We're doing it safely, if not a little more slow. Safe is slow, slow is safe, and we're happy with that. Excuse me. So call us. We're happy to brainstorm with you. If you have projects that are bigger than our $1,500 grant, we can work and plan on those with you and see if there are some federal grant sources, specifically National Fish and Wildlife Foundation sources, that we can go after. There's a long lag time and they only open up once a year, but we're happy to work with you on that. And this is us at ANJAC. We're not in the office anymore, but we're loving on our kitties and our puppies and fully equipped with our laptops. So we're here for you. info@anjac.org is one of the best ways to reach out to us, and we will be sure to get someone in touch with you. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Kevin to hear about the work that's being done on the local level in Lafayette.
Thank you, Jen. I kind of have a unique, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I kind of have a unique perspective because I'm just trying to bring up my PowerPoint. Because I've actually sat on the Open Space Committee in Lafayette Township since 2004. I was the chair of the Lafayette Land Use Board for upwards of 10 years and still sit on that body as well. And I'm also now involved in the governing body. So I kind of have gotten all the different perspectives that you would actually have when you're dealing with open space. I do want to thank ANJAC for you bringing up those grants. Before we actually had our first plan back in 2005, I believe, they did give us a grant to actually do that before we started collecting an open space grant, open space trust. So that was very helpful. And I do want to also mention that Lafayette does not have an environmental commission. We're kind of a small community, but we do have an open space committee. This here, you'll see on my first slide here is the update that we just performed with the Land Conservancy. They helped us on this. We just did this. We probably went a little longer than we should have because I think our original plan was 2005, and this was just passed as an element of our master plan last year.
Kevin, I don't mean to interrupt,
Sure.
but could you put your slides into slideshow mode?
Okay, how do I do that again? I remember that.
So up at the top, in that kind of orange bar up at the top, right now you're on home. If you go over to where it says slideshow, it's about in the middle.
You know what?
You
I
see
can't
that?
see 'cause this-
It's next to animations.
You know what it is? I got this bar, the toolbar is above of this. How do I get rid of that toolbar?
Right, if you click on the, I think. And
Is that a slideshow?
So just to the far left there, go from beginning or from current slide. Either one of those will work. In the control there.
Network or no? The problem is I have like a toolbar that's on top of this thing.
Go
Right,
to the
so-
left now.
Go to the far left in the gray
Okay.
part of the bar where it says from
Now
beginning.
Okay,
Down.
I see it.
There
Okay,
you go.
there we go. Is that
Okay,
better?
there you go. Yes,
Thank you.
looks great.
I just want to give you a quick background on Lafayette Township so you get a perspective of where, we're up in Sussex County, but we have 18 square miles centrally located in rural Sussex County. We have a very, very rich history of agriculture in the heart of the Kittatinny Valley. Approximately 6,000 acres in Lafayette Township are farmland assessed, not farmland preserved, but farmland assessed. We're located at the crossroads of two abandoned railroad beds converted to trails, and we get a lot of activity, especially with COVID, on these trails. They're abandoned railroad trails that have been taken over by the state. We have the Sussex Branch Trail, and the Polandskill Valley Trail. And we also have the Polandskill River that goes pretty much along those trails as well. Our population is about 2,500. We have about 900 housing units. We do not have any public water or sewer, so we rely only on well and septic. And our township is actually defined by 4 scenic ridge lines known as Harmony Vale Ridge, Old Beaver Run Ridge, Statesville Quarry Ridge, and the Sunrise Ridge, which actually provides us with some sort of problem with cell phone coverage, believe it or not, and rescue. But they still are beautiful bridges that give us some beautiful scenery from anywhere in the township. We also have a strong equestrian presence along with standard livestock. And we've recently, I'd say over the last 10 years, there's been a niche livestock forms of emu, bison, ostrich, llama, and alpaca, which have started to come with all these organic farms that you'll see coming up in our township. We have a former grist mill in the center of Lafayette, along with surrounding buildings that are operated by many antique dealers. It's a very busy weekend destination that you'll see people going through these stores and the old grist mill. We also have a very large rookery, which is known as the Blue Heron Rookery. This was a preservation project that pre-existed our open space plan. It was done with the New Jersey Natural Lands Trust. And when you walk around this area, it's about 262 acres. You feel like you're in the prehistoric times because there are so many blue herons that come to every year back to the nests and have their offspring. Let's see, next one. This was the original mission statement that we adopted back in 2004 when we created the Open Space Trust Fund. I'm sorry, the Open Space Trust Committee. We have 7-member advisory committee to the township that was created in 2004. 3 of the members that are on the committee were back in 2004. They were appointed and are still presently serving. We have monthly meetings. Now, we also sponsor outreach programs to advise residents of preservation opportunities, and we've done that probably 3 times where we invite large property owners and basically discuss farmland preservation and all the other options that might be available. One of the actual first projects we put together, the owners actually came to our original meeting, and we basically kept after them, and finally we were able to convince them to go into the open space preservation program. We also facilitate state direct acquisitions. We've had a couple of them when a developer actually sold off some property, and we were able to get the state involved directly to pick up some additional buffer along the Polandskill River. We also facilitate farmland preservation projects with the Sussex County program. And members of the committee often will attend land use board meetings and township meetings to facilitate our open space preservation initiatives. Last week, our committee also has been involved in updating, I think, our ROSI at least 3 times, recreation and open space inventory that was spoken about before. And we did have some issues with that because the original rookery, since it was preserved so long ago, there was some issues with respect to acreage, et cetera, but we were able to sort that all out and get our ROSI up to date. The history, the Township Committee in May of 2004 decided that they wanted to join the open space game, and they started our advisory committee so we could develop an open space and recreation plan. The fall of 2004, we met with Sussex County. We had a couple of meetings, and then we brought in who actually advised us about the Land Conservancy, who will be able to explain and help us prepare our original formal open space and recreation plan. The reason we decided and got the governing body to agree to that is that we had learned about the planning incentive grant funding, which is a 50-50 match, which is obviously very favorable, especially to a small town like us, because we only have 900 homes and we're not collecting a huge local open space trust tax each year. So it was very important for us to actually reach out and be able to marginalize and go out and get a lot of other assistance with our grant fundings to be able to move forward with our projects. Our original meeting with the township, we had about 50 people show up, including farmers that we had to basically provide us with feedback that Barbara talked about earlier. When you do your original plan, you want to identify what your preservation goals are. And, some of the things that we did have, the town was very, very, thought that the ridge lines were very important to preserve. They also wanted to, as Barbara mentioned, preserve farms and barns and silos, things like that, because that's really the rural character of Lafayette and our township. Ultimately, we were able to get the open space plan before the land use board, who adopted it as a element of our township master plan. In the summer of 2005, we put together a referendum for the November election that basically allowed Lafayette to collect between 1 and 3 cents, $100 assessed value in line with the statute. You see the statute referenced there. And our township approved this pretty marginally. At 57% were in favor of establishing a local open space trust that would allow us to marginalize the planning incentive grant funds that are actually available through state green acres. You see the vote there was 57 in favor, 43 against. Shortly thereafter, we in fact, I did it. I wrote the ordinance establishing the Lafayette Open Space and Recreation Trust, Farmland and Historical Trust Fund. We began collecting our first taxes in 2006, and you'll see that our trust is maintained. There's a statutory reference there. And this PowerPoint will be available to you after the discussion. We initially established our rate at 1.5 cents per 100 assessed value in 2006. Since we were just getting underway, we increased it to 1 3/4 in 2007, and then beginning in 2009, we reduced it to 1 cent, and that is what we're still collecting to date, which actually allows us to to marginalize that Green Acres 50-50 match. And I believe Barbara had mentioned earlier that you have to have at least 1/2 cent, or I thought it was actually 1 cent. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but you have to actually collect a certain amount on your local open space trust, in order to qualify for the planning incentive grant 50% matching. You'll see here's the goals that are actually set forth in what you can use your local space trust fund for. And when we originally did this, we designed our goals as acquisition of properties, because we were really looking for recreational property initially. We needed some more athletic fields, etc. And we basically took all of the different things that you could use this trust fund for from the statute. And you'll see there that we did not include development of lands, because we did not want to use our monies, at least initially, on development of open space projects. We needed to really go out and buy some land, which is what we've done. We had our original. In 2007, we put together, with the help of the Land Conservancy, our application for the Green Acres Planning Incentive Grant, and we were awarded quite a bit of money, as we'll get to in a little bit. In 2012, which I mentioned earlier, the Ridgeline and Hillside Protection Overlay Zone was basically drafted by the Land Use Board with the planner in order to protect all these 4 different ridge lines, because we were trying to keep development off the top of these mountains, and we came up with design standards that basically hide homes that might be built on the higher ends of these hills, and they have to be down a certain amount of feet from the top of the ridge, and also basically using colors that you won't see standout homes along these ridge lines, because they're very important to the township and really what the character of Lafayette is about. Let's see, in October 4th, 2012, we had our first municipal open space acquisition. Is there a way to get rid of I can't see my entire screen here. Maybe I can. I see oh, here we go. I see it. Okay. And it was a purchase of a Lawler tract off Warbass Junction Road with targeted objective. This was going to be our site for future active recreation needs. And basically, we work with the state of New Jersey on this, which was a very, very good partnership, because we acquired 53 acres and the state acquired 45 acres to the rear and annexed it to the Hyperhumus Wildlife Management Area, which is a large a management area that they had owned for years. So they were able to actually subdivide the property without really going through the whole subdivision process. And you can see that the total cost of this property or project, I should say, was $455,677, of which half of that money came from the planning incentive grant funding. We were also able to appear before the Sussex County Open Space Trust, the committee, and they basically contributed $200,000 to this because it's such a, it really is adjacent to the Sussex Branch Trail. And they wanted basically to have us buy this property, and we're still working on trying to do it, but nearby, there's a parking lot that accesses the Sussex Branch Trail, but a lot of people in our area have horses and bigger horse trailers. And what they wanted us to do is develop a parking lot that would accommodate these trailers so people can get access to the trails. Our local trust, you'll see, only contributed $27,838.50, which is important to us because, again, we don't raise a lot of money each year to buttress our local open space trust. Their second project that we actually, I wanted to also, in October 21st, 2013, Lafayette Village Historic District was listed on the State Register of Historic Places. We do have a historical foundation that basically took care of getting that done in the downtown area where this grist mill I was talking about earlier. And then on December 31st, 2013, Lafayette Village Historic District was added to the National Register of Historic Places. In March, I hope I'm not boring you, but March 25th, 2015, we had our second municipal open space acquisition. And this was the purchase of a tract known as Moose Castamore off of Lance Road. The targeted objective here was preserving that ridge, like I've talked about. We acquired 73 acres of farm fields and beautifully forested ridge top with iconic scenic views. It's very heavy mature type forests are on this property. And the land use board did have a subdivision concept come before it, where they were basically going to put homes all along the top of this ridge. And we were able to convince the property owner to go preservation instead. This is important to some degree because it also, when I show you mapping in a little bit, it overlooks Route 565, where the Sussex County Farm and Horse Show is taking place over in the next town. So keeping this forested area is really important to the farm and horse show grounds, because when they're looking off to the distance, you can see some of these homes that were developed along the ridge farther down in the next town over. But we were able to protect a good portion of this ridge, and it just provides a nice setting for the farm and horse show. That was a total cost of $467,500. This basically was a state planning incentive grant funding was used, and our local trust, which was a big hit on our local trust fund. But it shows you how important the ridges are to Lafayette, and the governing body went along with it because they wanted to preserve that ridge. Our third project was a former Morgan farm off of Gorney Road, which basically added 42 acres to that neighboring tract that I just talked about on the ridge. The total cost of this was, our most recent one was $300,000. We used $167,000 approximately state planning incentive grant funding for that. And also Sussex County, again, agreed to contribute $100,000 towards this project. I think we were able to do that because, again, we're preserving that ridge that overlooks the Sussex County Farm and Horse Show ground, which is an important venue for Sussex County. And again, we only used about $32,000 or $33,000 of our local trust fund for that project. And then more recently, just to bring us up on history, 2020 Lafayette drafted again the update that we spoke about to our plan, probably 5 years overdue, but we got it done, and we are now going to hopefully, renew our request for some additional planning incentive grant funding. This was just a quick flyer that we had given out and sent to all of the different groups in town, the school, the fire department, EMS, senior citizens, Preservation Society, and the PTO, to get people to attend our initial meeting to identify our goals. And we also, I know I myself had sent letters out to the newspaper, and we did letters to the editor to publicize the meeting, because it's important to get your community involved, as I think Jennifer had mentioned. You want to get community involvement so you can identify exactly what the township is looking to preserve. This basically is just the summary of our public comment that showed up in our original plan. Again, rural character is very important to our town. Preserving historic structures, including historic barns, silos, and churches. Farmland preservation ranks very high with residents because of the long rural character and the fact that agriculture was a big part of Lafayette dating back several hundred years. One of the other things we did identify was making the Lafayette Center basically a historic center, which has now taken place. The ridges, again, you can see as you're going through this list in the 16 to 20 years, we've actually been able to accomplish a lot of those original goals, including, collecting the open space tax, working on our greenways, and basically additionally buffering our trail systems. This here was a project that the township had when we talked about silos. This is an old farm back here. There's another silo over here. We commissioned an artist who really, really enjoyed doing this. And he probably made about 30 cents an hour by the time he was done, because being able to actually paint on this was very difficult. He had scaffolding all up here, but it's kind of a cool thing that we had put across from what is now known as the Shops in Lafayette. And it just is a nice, it's a nice landmark. People now basically know where this is. And over here, right behind that, is a really, really old cemetery. And our Lafayette Township Preservation Foundation has fundraising activities, and they did a ghost stories for Halloween that people went in here with all kinds of lanterns and stuff. And it's located right behind that silo to basically help historic preservation. Some of these graves in this go back to the 1700s. The preservation also, this used to be Lafayette's municipal building, but it's actually a homestead, and a farm was behind it. And they have basically made it their duty to actually restore this entire property, which they fundraised for and everything else. So this is how our historical element comes in. We have a very active preservation foundation, which started in 2004. So they're still working on upstairs, but it's incredible what they've done to this property. Here again, just to give you an idea of how we did our funding, we started that 2005, the ballot resolution, which established our local open space trust fund. We currently are, as I mentioned, are collecting 1 cent per $100 assessed value. You can see to date, since we started collecting the tax, I think it was 2006, I said, we've collected $644,067 in local open space trust, and I have spent $420,936. We've been awarded $1,125,000 in green acres planting incentive grants. It was helpful to have the Land Conservancy around to get us those funds. We did end up losing some of them because they were reprogrammed and we could have an active project, but we hope to actually make another application to get some more funding from them. You can see how little
excuse me. I just wanted to interrupt for 1 second.
Sure.
I wanted to give you it's like a 4-minute warning at this point, so we can still have some time left for Q&A.
Sure.
Again. Could you do that? Okay, thank you.
You can see how we only collect $32,000 a year because we're a small community. That's why you have to look to marginalize really basically anybody, any other source of funding that you can have, whether it's our county open space and or the state, and so we have to basically look for that funding to actually do some of the projects we've done. We did collect, as I said, $300,000 for 2 different projects in Sussex County, which obviously was able to let us still have our funding in our open space trust fund. Here's our maps. Essentially, you'll see there's that blue heron rookery I was talking about, but you can see how much we have as far as farmland preserve property, and they're all very close together. But I can give you a breakdown of what we've done in Lafayette. 457 acres of municipal open space. Here's all those projects that I just mentioned that make all those that comprise of those acres. You can see we have 1,662 acres of protected farmland. That's a total of 17 farms. Our first project dates back to 1990, and the cost per acre paid on the acquiring of those development rights have been $1,700 to $15,500 per acre. This is how much it totally cost to actually acquire all those acres, and they're covered by the county farmland preservation program and the state agricultural development committee. We have 356 acres in state land preserved in 5 preserves, 108 acres in the federal wetlands reserve program, for a total of 2,583 acres of preserved land in the township of Lafayette. This just breaks down real quickly where these 3 projects were. When I talked about the Sussex County, this is the one. This is the first project here where we've got all the trails going through here, active forest. This was our second one. When I talked about the Foreman Horse Show, it's over here. You can see how mature this forested area is, and then you can see how the next town over allowed this. This is very high up, and there's homes at the top of the ridge, and that's one of the biggest primary goals that the township wanted to see saved, was to protect our ridge lines. So that's the second project. Here's the third project, which is right next door to it, and you can see how large of a forested area that is. Just another map, a couple other maps to basically, when you get to actually target open space, you can use these maps to figure out where you want to work and really try to expend your efforts in trying to get certain property owners to actually preserve their properties. And you can see all these maps actually help you, in trying to establish greenways, etc. This was our updated goals. The only difference to these really pretty much was that we wanted to add stewardship of lands as a primary added element. Since we had acquired 3 properties, we figured it was time to maybe spend some money on development of those properties. So we did have a referendum question in November 2020, which basically opened up our open space trust fund to allow for expending monies towards developing the properties we've actually acquired. This is just a quick, letter that was supporting that open space trust fund amendment in 2020. And what we're doing on this project now is we're going to approach the county. Sussex County basically just finished with a grant round, or going to open up a grant round that allows for trails in Sussex County, because they also allowed for stewardship. I think in 2018, I think they had a referendum to add stewardship to theirs. So our idea over at the first property that we preserved is to basically create a trail system through our portion of the property that will get access back to the state trails. This referendum did pass, by the way, allowing us our stewardship 477 to 371 in 2020. And we have met recently with the county open space representatives about presenting this type of a to get some funding to help us develop this trail. This is that Moose Castamore acquisition I was talking about, where you can see how high up this is. This is the actual farmland, or I should say the farm fields. The rest of it, 60 acres or so, is all mature forest. And I just want to mention this because we do this. We have 2 of our properties are actually subject of a farm lease. And the reason we did that, Green Acres sent us an approved form of lease. The reason why to do that is the farmer then, is able to actually, until we decide what we're going to do with these properties, he can curtail invasive species. It reduces the DPW maintenance responsibilities, and the farmer, in exchange for leasing the property, will take care of the property for you, essentially. And still, it's open to the public, but he will actually plant the fields. So we've been able to do that, and it also allows any of that farming income to basically go back into our open space trust fund for other projects. And that's just contact information. And that's taken from one of our rookery with the Paranor. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you. That was very interesting. I really want to go out and check out that rookery and see. Oh, that looks really fascinating.
Wear your boots.
Yes. So let's get right to the questions. Let's see. Is it Doug Wellner from Evesham Township asks, is it better to have a separate plan for passive recreation open space? So Barbara.
So No, I mean, you can have a trails plan that would give you an idea of how to use your open spaces for walking or nature study, but you can include that in an open space and recreation plan. That decision is entirely up to the municipality. You can go either way.
Okay. If a town is using open space funds to install artificial turf on sports field instead of purchasing or preserving open space, what is the best way to learn more about the appropriate and legal uses of open space funds?
You need to contact your municipal attorney and have the attorney check the referendum that established your open space trust fund and then the ordinance that was enacted to collect the tax. That's the best way to go.
Thank you. Let's see, Paul asks, he says, we have a marina that wants to donate a few acres of saltwater marshland to the township. We have checked GeoWeb and DEP data miner for any historic issues with the site and have found none. It is not a buildable area, so I'm not sure if adding it to our open space inventory has any benefit. The owner will of course benefit from reduced property tax. Anything we should be thinking about here?
So the property tax impact is probably minimal for the landowner because it's an unbuildable site. For the town to accept it, we would strongly recommend that they do an environmental assessment just to make sure that the property's clean.
Thank you.
The other things I was thinking about when I saw that question is if the town wanted to have access to that land. So would the property owner, would it be a conservation easement and it would still be for the use of just the property owner? Do you have public access? Is there public access to waterways that the township desires to have either now or at some point? So thinking about that as well might be helpful.
So Steve Frattini asks, much of the remaining open space in my town is either owned by businesses or government, such as the New Jersey Department of Transportation. Are there any examples of, I think he means compromise, where a business or government shares some of their open space with a town, for instance, to be used as a small park?
Yeah, that was a great question, and I really liked it. So that's when you have to be innovative as to how you define open space and open space opportunities. We're seeing a lot of towns looking at the reuse of land as open space. I'll give you an example. There's 2 towns that we've worked with that have wanted to purchase gas stations and remove all of the infrastructure, clean out the tanks, because the stations are located right at an entry point to a park, or they are in the center of the municipality and become a really nice pocket park for the town. So you definitely want to look at kind of your whole municipality and see what it is that would really work best. And if it's not undeveloped and it's not a farm, that's okay. You can buy it and reuse it. You have to look, when you do these things, Green Acres will purchase land with buildings on it, and we'll pay whatever the certified market value is. And Green Acres has funding to help you remove those buildings. Depending on what county you're in, the county may or may not fund the buildings. So you have to really look at what your public grant sources are and how you can put together a financial package to purchase that property.
All right, we'll just chime in. The first project we had was the Lawler Farm. It was 2 homes on that property and a barn. It was really like an old farm. So we did do that environmental, which was a good thing to do because we had a diesel tank in the ground and we had some pesticide use as well that we were able to clean up and get that taken care of. But our DPW was able to handle, I wasn't really in favor of it, but they actually demoed the 2 homes that were on there. There weren't any historical significance or anything. But we did keep the barn because potentially we might be able to use that for that tract to store any equipment that might be needed there, et cetera, as long as it's, can be used for a recreational use. I think that's the Land Conservancy where it said we could keep the barn. So we have kept that barn there.
Great.
Thank you. And we have a question about how much does a plan cost?
Another good question. I saw that as well. It really depends on whether it's a new plan, whether you're updating an existing plan, if the planner has your data in-house or not. Fees can range anywhere from, I'd say, 10 to 15,000 for an open space plan.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see, Pamela Perone asks, in view of the pandemic, can a town council decide not to levy the local open space tax this year?
So a municipality, the governing body can levy the tax, or they can let it rest for a year and not levy it. It's really a governing body decision. It doesn't have to be due for any one reason or another. But if the town is going to apply for Green Acres, and Green Acres is absolutely having a funding round this year, any day they're going to make their announcement, you have to be collecting a tax at the time of that application. So you have to be thoughtful about whether or not you let the tax sit for a year or two.
Barbara, is that 1 cent or is it, I thought it may have gone down a little bit. Is it 1
It
cent or
did
half
go
a cent?
down. Yeah, I checked before this, and I saw that's also a question on the list. Is it a half cent or 1 cent? If you want to be in the planning incentive program, it's 1/2 cent. So if it's a site-specific application, I think it's also, I think it might be a cent, but you need to check with the Green Acres website.
All right, and Wendy Dabney asks, can a zoning board member also serve as an environmental commissioner?
Yes, but it's not a substitute for a shared member with the planning board.
Thank you. Anne Marchioni asks, once a property is on the Rossi, can it be removed?
Unfortunately, it can. It's called, yes, I'm with Debbie, with Kevin. It's called a diversion. And you'd have to go through the State House Commission to get permission to remove it from your Rossi. They make it a very cumbersome, expensive process, which they should, because the whole concept of a Rossi is permanence.
Isn't it also, Barbara, that if you actually, like if you diverted 1 acre, you have to then come up with 5 acres elsewhere in the town? Is it 5 times that amount or something?
It varies. It depends on what the diversion is being used for. If the diversion is for another municipal purpose, so there's another public good associated with it, the penalty is that much less. It could be either 5 or 10 times. There's one town we worked with where they told us they didn't know what the penalty was. It could be 200 to 1 because there were so many government layers of restrictions on that property that the town had diverted. So the town actually bought the property back rather than divert it.
So Kevin, this one's for you. James Bossler asks, is Lafayette Village historic part, is Lafayette Village historic part of the open space or the Rossi?
No, we have Lafayette Village used to be an old shopping center that's now called the Shops at Lafayette. That's a retail, kind of a colonial village type thing. But in the center of town, we have where the grist mill is and everything else that is historically recognized at this point. So it really didn't come so much off of our open space plan, other than it was, we wanted to, go after historical, and protect our historical buildings, et cetera, in the center of town. But it was more the Lafayette Foundation that took that as a task and was able to get that accomplished, or Lafayette historical preservation.
Thank you. Sherry Dudas asks, now that land values are rising, are any organizations using the tax advantages of donations or partial donations to leverage preservation monies?
Another good question. Land values are rising. The Land Conservancy anticipates seeing that in appraisals in probably about a year, because you're going to have comparable sales. We always ask about donations, always ask about bargain sales. You should do the same. Huge tax advantages for the landowner, and there's benefits for you in terms of leveraging public funds. So it's a tool in your toolbox, and you should be using it all the time.
Our last project, actually, that Morgan Farm was, I don't, what is the actual term that's used? We were able to get it for he agreed to a reduced amount. I don't remember exactly what
it was a bargain sale.
Yes. And it was very helpful in making that happen, actually, because the gentleman who owned that property was elderly and essentially needed some money quickly to be able to sell that property.
Okay, Christina Lewis asks, once a property or properties has been purchased as open space, what is the best way to map out, excuse me, and work at creating trails, biking, hiking, walking, etc., to allow residents and non-residents a way to use and enjoy the property? How can trails be created and joined to existing nearby trails? Which organization is the best to start with?
So that's a good question. I mean, the Land Conservancy does trail planning. I don't know where she's located. New York, New Jersey Trail Conference, if you're located up where the Highlands Trail is, they're also a really good resource. I happen to think that locals are really good at identifying where people walk because they're there all the time. So to me, a really good first step would be either your open space committee or your environmental commission go out to the property and walk it. And as you walk it, start looking around. A big thing to watch out for is the flow of water. Water, I love water. Water is your number one enemy when it comes to trails. It washes them away. So after you've walked it with your open space committee and your environmental commission, get your engineer out. And if the engineer goes out, get the engineer out again, because you want to make double extra sure that your trails are constructed properly.
And we are actually
It's
doing that right now
waterproof.
with Linda from that property over at the Lola property. She has gone out there twice now to investigate exactly what you're talking about, because some parts of it, as you get back to the state trails, is wet, and we're trying to locate it where we have a dry area to get over to the state trails.
Since water is such an issue of concern, Barbara, does it make sense to look at the trails in different seasons? So if you've got a dry July, you might want to go out in October once the rains come in.
Yeah, really excellent point. Definitely go out at different seasons, but there's a unique hydrology to the way water flows, and an engineer can see that as well. But it's surprising because it can trip you up when you don't expect it. Morris County Park Commission has a trails grant, and they have some good resource information on their webpage if you go on Morris County Park Commission's page for trail grants.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
I
And
would
I'm-
also add that if you are in an area, sorry, Sheila, where ATVs may be an issue, you may want to try to design in relationship to them, or at least think about ATVs in terms of a stewardship access. Illegal off-road vehicles or ATVing or mud trucks are a real problem in much of the state, but they're big problems in certain areas of the Highlands and the Pinelands.
So I'd like to be mindful of everybody's time, and we'll just take one more question. And if you have additional questions, please reach out to us at info@anjec.org, and we can get the answers to you. This last question is from Lisa Dowd. She says, our town has been reaching out to landowners to purchase land for open space wooded lots with little luck, because landowners know they can get more money from developers. Is there a way for a town to pay over market price for a piece of land?
A town can always pay over appraised value. It's not something that we recommend because you're setting a new comparable sale. But if it's a property that's of such high importance and you think it's going to trigger the purchase of other properties, you can, consider it. The state funding and most likely county funding will only go to the appraised value. So anything that's above it is going to be a municipal responsibility. But there's no law or rule that says you can't go above appraised value, and towns we've worked with have done that.
Okay, well, thank you all again for coming and for sharing your information. And thank you to everybody who's attending, and look out for an email from us. We'll have follow-up materials. We'll have the presentations. We'll have a link to the recording, and also a link to the new open space resource paper. So you'll be hearing from us.